America, we stand for freedom. Though freedom is never really free, we yearn and strive for government, protecting our liberty.
Good evening and welcome to Your Right to Know by the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. My name is Mary Lotze and I will be your co-host for this evening's show. Joining me as my usual co-host and my friend Andrew Couture, attorney at law and treasurer of the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. Happy New Year, everyone, because this is the first show of 2018, and it's very hard to believe that we've gone through a whole year so far. Some big elections. We've just come off with a wonderful win by our own Fitchburg, Dean Tran, who won in a special election for our state senate, Worcester Middlesex District. Andrew, I don't know about you, but I know when I saw people since Dean Tran's win on December 5th, the first question people said to me is, what does Dean Tran's win mean for the Republican Party in north central Massachusetts?
There's a lot of excitement about this win, Mary, and I want to see what our panelists have to say.
I think that's wonderful.
We've all thought about this since Dean's win on December 5th, and when it became apparent that Dean was the winner. But I'd like to first introduce our panelists tonight. First, Mike Clark, chairman of the Lunenburg Republican Town Committee. Elmer Eubanks, instructor of economics at Quinsigamond Community College and Mount Wachusett Community College. Dan Mylott, former mayor of Fitchburg. And Sue Smiley, MASSGOP Committeewoman. Thank you, everybody, for being on here tonight.
Thanks.
So, panelists, what does Dean Tran's win mean for the GOP?
Jump on in.
Go ahead, Dan.
I think that it's a very good omen for the whole area. This part of the state has become the Republican stronghold, and this is just going to be a good face for us throughout the state, because Dean is he's a great candidate. He's going to be a great senator. And he's got a great family, so I mean, I think it's going to bode well for Fitchburg.
Yes, I completely agree. I completely agree. Mike, what do you think?
I think Dean set the example. He presented a nice platform, but an open platform, and his personality, his character were accepting to ideas. He could converse. He wasn't boxed in like his opponents with more of a closed platform, and they just wanted to present what they had. Dean was much more open in ideas. I think that sets the example for the Republicans that we see coming in Massachusetts.
Susan?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited as a state committee woman for the GOP. Dean's our lucky number 7, and the highest number of Republican senators in 18 years. So I think that contributes to the excitement that we have. Dean was a unique candidate for all the reasons Mike stated, and more. He worked hard. He just dynamic with embracing everyone across our Republican platform, as well as reaching out to the independents and the Democrats. I mean, I think his message resonated with so many in the district, and I, again, to agree with Dan, he is going to do a phenomenal job for our district, so I'm really excited.
How long has it been since we've had a Republican in this seat?
Well, Senator Mary Padula, I believe, was our last.
I thought I heard 92. I thought it was since 1992.
Yeah, I don't know
quite a while.
What the exact years are, but I think Mary was in for quite some time, Dan, you might have a better sense of that.
Well, I can't remember what his name is. It's terrible of me, but before her, there was a Republican in that seat also.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Elmer, what do you think?
Well, I think coming from having seen what he's done in the community and actually working in the city council and working with people and actually being friendly and coming out and helping anybody that calls him, you could actually pick up the phone and send him a text message, he'd reply. So I think that really played into what people felt like it's somebody that's going to listen to them and really, hear what we need to, what's happening in the community and try to make changes that'll help us, and hopefully reduce a lot of our taxes too.
Now, we have several big important elections coming up. Governor and the lieutenant governor, U.S. Senator, where Elizabeth Warren is being challenged by at least 3 Republicans, Jeff Deal, Beth Lindstrom, and John Kingston, as well as a U.S. House of Representatives seat for the 3rd Congressional District. This is an unencumbered election. The GOP has 2 candidates, Rick Green and Scott Gunderson. What do you guys think? Is this a turning point right now?
I think it'll start to turn. We saw it with Dean's win, but I think we can't just sit back and wait. We have to get out there and work hard to try to get some more Republicans elected.
Mike? Yeah, I think being able to field 3 good Republican candidates for the Senate and 2 congressional is good. I think it emulates Dean's platform. These are very middle of the road Republicans, good platform, open concept. I think it'll work well.
Yeah, again, I think it's a great time to be a Republican in Massachusetts. 2018 is taking a lot of momentum, and I really think we need to credit our governor and lieutenant governor for the hard work that they're doing. I mean, the governor has maintained his popularity, and this is the kind of refreshing politics that I think the people are looking for, and it's not that positional back in a box concept. It's just all rhetoric. I think people really want to see working across the aisle and considering folks for who they are, not necessarily that typical political identity politics. So I'm excited. We've got some good candidates. I was down in Worcester the other evening, and we've got GOP candidates taking on Senator Goby. We've got another person who's a young man out of Millville who's taking on Jim McGovern. And so, we have folks that are looking at the Attorney General spot. So I think, we've got Republican state reps that are looking to gain bigger seats, wider district seats, county seats. So there's some momentum. And I think the success that Dean was able to realize was our Republican Party coming together and really supporting everybody, which again for me is very exciting to feel and to see.
Yeah, I agree, and in fact, your Right to Know hopes to introduce a lot of these candidates in the upcoming few shows. Right. Especially, I'm very excited. I'm excited about all these races, but I'm also very excited about the Attorney General's race as well. I think we have
certainly as an attorney,
good candidates as well.
One of the things, Andrew, that I was wondering about is I love to call the greedy grab is what I like to call it, and that's last year, just about a year ago at this time, where all the state legislators, all the Democratic state legislators signed themselves in a healthy pay raise. And it didn't get one Republican vote. It was strictly a Democratic move to give themselves hefty pay raises. Do you think the voters thought of that when they went to the polls and voted for Republican Dean Tran? Do you think it's still resonating? You still hear people say, how could they have gone ahead and given themselves a pay raise? Do you think people are still thinking of that when they voted Republican this go-round? Mike?
Well, I think what it established was with his challenger, that she wasn't going to break ranks. She had a pretty good entourage. She was doing her op photos with Jen Benson, Natalie Higgins, the rest of them that voted for the pay raise. I think
Very good
we
point.
couldn't see that she
Yeah.
she would be able to discriminate from that or break ranks. So I think that was the issue.
Elmer, do you have any thoughts?
Oh, I think that was one of the key issues that you would hear when talking to people.
Yes. Yeah.
When you're knocking
People
on
are
doors.
it's
that's-
still in people's craw.
Yeah,
We
it was
can't
still-
give ourselves pay raises. I'm sure many of our viewers can't go out and give themselves pay raises.
Right.
But they did it through a signature.
Which I think is the biggest thing, is like why would they do that when at the same time we had all these big concerns about revenue coming into the
Coming
state.
in.
So if you have the revenue side not really good, how do you then
Justify.
turn around and justify that? It just didn't make any sense.
I
Dan, our resident office holder. You've
I think
handled budgets.
I think we have to be realistic and realize that the voters are not stupid. And they know that Dean Tran is not going to turn that around and get that reversed. And I think people understand that. I think what we as Republicans need to do is take small steps to bring the issues forward so that people start to talk about those issues as if they can make a change. Because people right now, they have to accept it. They know there's nothing they can do about
And
it.
that's because of the unequal balance of power.
Right, the inequality.
And that was another one of my questions, because one of the things that I was actually thinking of also is, why did Dean Tran win? And I'm just going to throw out a couple of ideas so that I want you to respond to it. Did he win because he's just a good candidate, he had solid credentials, he's a fiscal conservative with a strong business background? He touted all of that during his campaign. He's a Republican. Then there are too many Democrats currently on Beacon Hill, and people realize things like the greedy grab could happen because of this inequality of power locked into the Democratic legislatures in Boston. His personal story certainly resonated with many. I mean, his very meager upbringing coming in as an immigrant into this country after the Vietnam War was certainly hit many people in very strong ways. And then we also have the possibility, was it Governor Baker's popularity stumping for Dean that really turned the tide? What do you think? Or there may be other reasons? Was he just a really good candidate?
I think that's the basic part of this whole election, was we had a candidate that people could look at.
For many of these reasons that I've outlined.
That's right. And I think that was the important part of it. You can't discount the governor's presence or the lieutenant governor's presence. In fact, the lieutenant governor, to me, is more valuable in this district than the governor, because people love the lieutenant governor up here, and because she's good.
And she's from
And she
Shrewsbury.
works, and she works
She works hard.
She
really
works,
hard.
yeah.
She has a good work ethic, much like Dean, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, she knows what it takes. It's hard work, and that, you know, I think that's a good point. And I think the people of this district respect that.
That's right.
Dan, you're absolutely right. For me, I think, you know, I think it was all these reasons and more. I have to say, you know, again, you know, I think our party was a big contributor with the governor behind this race. There was a lot of work. There was a lot of people that came together. I can't stress that enough. It doesn't take away from the hard work that Dean did on his own, but to see, you know, all of our colleagues in the Republican Party in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts come together, get behind Dean, go out, do whatever needed to be done, just to me was a testament of how we get Republicans elected.
You know, Susan, just to reiterate, and I want to let our viewers know, because I was at Dean's headquarters almost every day. It's only simply because it's near my home. So I was able to pop in routinely and just see how things were going. I have never seen a candidate work as hard as Dean Tran. Every single day he was pounding the pavement, making phone calls. When he was in the headquarters, believe me, he wasn't drinking sodas and chomping on chips. I mean, he was working all the time. And then to go into what you say, we like to say our Republican group is a family.
Right.
And And I met so many new people during this time. Not only we brought in some new members like Elmer, but Mike and his wife from Lunenburg, and we got to work with the people, and it was a wonderful thing. And this is a momentum that we don't want to stop at this point.
And in the alternative, Dean's Democratic competitor, I mean, she pulled out all the stops. I mean, she brought in Elizabeth Warren, she brought in Attorney General Maura Healey, and ultimately it made no difference in the vote. What do you guys think of that? Do these establishment Democrats have something to worry about in the upcoming elections?
I definitely do think they're probably starting to feel like there's a little bit of pressure there.
We can definitely hope.
Yeah, it's like finally maybe we've turned the tide a little bit and try to balance things out. But yeah, I think that comes into play.
Yeah. I think I think their long withstanding empire is starting to crumble a little bit, and all the associates with them. And I think, again, I go back to, Mike made a really great point. You can't just be here. You've got to really, expand your thought, expand your perspective. And from the things that are happening, with Senate President, Mr. Rosenberg, and that frightfulness, and just all of it that's happening, I mean, it's starting to just crumble. And I think it's good to see new people coming up and stepping in and really working for the people, I think, is what we're all looking for.
Yeah, they have a strong base, but it's a finite base. And so I think Dean was able to hit that critical mass and move beyond it and attract more independents and get other Republicans out and with the town committees pushing for him, he was able to meet their base and then expand on it and get past that where they weren't able to attract the independents and others in.
If we look to 2018 then, so now we're going to have both Maura Healey on the state level and we're going to have Elizabeth Warren on the national level up for election. Do you think either one of those, who are also very popular, not with Republicans, but certainly with Democrats, do you think they are still strong candidates? I hear a lot of people in Massachusetts a little frustrated with Elizabeth Warren. They find her progressive, her very far left progressive stance is turning off a lot of Massachusetts Democrats. They're not able to identify with her. Nationally, she's popular, but nationally doesn't matter in Massachusetts. Elmer, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the issues that you see, that she's so far left now that a lot of people are starting to turn off and feel like, hey, that's not where we wanted to go. And we want somebody that's middle of the road. I think Massachusetts is middle of the road. It's not far left, it's not far right. So somebody that can galvanize people in the middle would probably not, take her out as far as the, elections. So we just have to find that right candidate. We got 3, I think, people running already that could potentially, show another view that because of that whole, you said identity politics and that whole left-wing view. I mean, I've lived through in a communist country. Dean has as well. I was in Nicaragua when Somoza lost and the Sandinistas took over. So to see somebody that's that far left, that's carrying us in that direction, it's scary. Our rights we start to lose our rights, our constitutional rights. I mean, everything starts to look, too far left, and we don't want to be that country. And definitely, if somebody's pushing that agenda, we want to hopefully bring it back to the center.
Back to the center.
Well, going off of what you just said, Elmer, I mean, it just seems like the Democratic Party is moving to a socialist communist type of ideology. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I've seen, even with in the presidential campaign, I mean, that's where they were headed. It's like, how is it that they've gone so far left?
I mean, Bernie Sanders.
Yeah,
he's a self-proclaimed socialist.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, the Democratic Party is really going off the rails, in my belief, that they're heading way too far left, and they're going to lose the center of the country.
And that's what's happening. I think we're seeing it here in Massachusetts, in central Mass. We're central, right? We're seeing it here. Where we, you know, around the towns, the suburbs, people are just like fed up with it. Like, you know, how long are we going to keep losing our rights and letting people continue to do that?
And that moves into Maura Healey. You know, I mean, I know a lot of Democrats, you know, pro-gun Democrats that despise her because of some of the rulings that she has no constitutional basis to do. But yet she just completely goes over the legislature, she goes over the judiciary, and just says, you know what, this is how we're going to be interpreting the law right now. And, you know, I know a lot of people are still angry about that, and they are up in arms, so to speak, not literally, but figuratively. But that's good. I believe that's going to resonate in the 2018 election. What do you think, Sue?
I mean, I think, again, these folks, Warren, Healey, you know, what about Massachusetts, right? You know, can you know, the people of Massachusetts elected these folks. I'd like to see them work on the things in Massachusetts that need to be focused on, rather than, you know, puffing up their wings and feathers for future endeavors. I think you can naturally do that, like many of us do when we climb that ladder in our own jobs. You know, let's just focus on what's in front of us and what we were elected to do. I guess, you know, again, people want to see their elected officials doing things for their district, their towns, whatever that means. And I think these two gals, that may affect them in 2018.
Which bodes well for, again, the Republican candidates.
Let's hope.
And gives them an opportunity.
Yes.
Now, do you see any parallels between Dean Tran's win in Massachusetts, a reliably blue or Democratic state, and Doug Jones' recent U.S. Senate win in Alabama, a reliably red Republican state?
No.
No. I think that's a very
That was a specific case.
Yeah, I don't see
different
that.
candidates, different states, different
So you think
set
that
of
was
affairs.
strictly a candidate related, that Judge Roy Moore was really a very poor candidate? And that's why the vote went to a Democrat in a
They're just different.
Republican
They're
state.
just different.
The most Republican state in the
Do
country.
you think it'll change? Do you think Doug Jones will change ultimately the voting outlook for the state of Alabama? Do you think it's like a special election? It was a special election, just like Dean.
Well, he's got to win again in 2018, just like Dean.
Yeah.
So I would say that would be the only correlation. So,
You think if the Republicans came out with a strong, good candidate, quality candidate, that the Republican would take the seat back in a?
we'll see.
It's a very conservative state, so
Yeah.
I don't
and
think there's any problem with doing that, except that now Jones is going to have the weight of the whole Democratic Party on him. They're not going to lose that seat just because they don't work at it.
Sure.
And I think there's an element of this race as well in 2018 that Dean's got to keep his work focused because he has to get reelected in 2018. So there will be an eye on that, I suspect, as well, from those that did not take the seat this time. So I think that will be important there.
I know we talked about it briefly, Susan. You started going into it a little bit. But I'd like to look more on the idea of new candidates coming out. And elections, special elections, such as what Dean just went through, is it bringing out new people, new candidates that are willing to throw their hat into an electoral ring and challenge an incumbent just because they think the time is right? I was reading the Boston Herald just the other day, and it was talking about a city councilor in Boston, Democrat, who's challenging who will challenge Mike Capuano, who's a U.S. representative. We saw Tito Jackson challenge a very popular mayor, Marty Walsh, in Boston. Do you think there's new people coming up who, in the Republican Party, who say, I'm tired of the status quo, I'm going to go after some of these entrenched candidates that we've had? Is the time right for that?
Oh, I think the time is right for that. I think it's definitely right. The biggest problem that we have as political people is to understand that you can't win an election with nobody. It has to be a credible candidate. And all too often we put up candidates just to put candidates up. It doesn't work. It demeans all of the work we've done in the past. You have to have someone that is credible.
I agree, and I think it's happening not only within the Republican Party, Mary, I think it's happening within the Democratic Party. You know, they're confused. You know, they're where we were, you know, probably eight years ago. They're trying to sort out who they are, how to reinvent them. You know, you've got long withstanding state reps in this district that have been there for a long time. So it will be refreshing to see some replacement activity hopefully coming along. And I think that it's just happening on both parties. So I think the time is now. There's a lot of people that want to go back again to we the people.
We're coming down to our last couple of minutes, so I want to ask quickly, what part does Donald Trump play in any of these changes? I don't mean to catch anybody off guard, but is Donald Trump doesn't play at all in any of these changes? Just like, there's no right or wrong answer, I'm just interested.
I think he does to a certain extent, because it's stirring the pot a little bit, right? So
he's a pot stirrer.
But it also brings out, I think, a lot of other people that have not necessarily the same views that he does, but we have, you know, more people coming out and saying, hey, I want to change things too.
Sure.
So, and I think that's where we see the change part, is what I think a lot of people voted for, is like, we want to get some change. That's kind of really where we kind of went through Trump, right? It's like, we want to get some of these people out that are entrenched, and we don't have term limits, so how do we get them out?
I mean, he was the ultimate change.
Yeah,
I mean,
completely.
You couldn't have anybody that's more changing than he is.
Yeah.
And I think that's what politics in general needs, is change. Republican and Democrat, they're both entrenched in their own areas. Not in Massachusetts, obviously, it's all Democrats, but you need to have change, and I think people are ready for change, but it's going to be, what is the right change?
Well, isn't it Mark Twain that said that politicians are like diapers? They have to be changed every so often for the same reason? So
I think I'm with him.
I heard that one. That's quite
So
cool.
with that, we'd like to wish everyone a Happy New Year, and that begins with our panel. May we all have the changes and see the changes that we need in not only in Boston on Beacon Hill, but also in Washington, D.C. And we thank you for watching Your Right to Know and sitting in tonight with the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. As we leave you, we want you to remember that your local city or town Republican committee is your only grassroots organization that supports and holds dear your liberty, your constitutional rights, and your conservative values. We encourage you to join us. Why? Because to us, the GOP stands for growth, opportunity, and prosperity for all people, and because we always stand for freedom. Thank you, good night, and have a wonderful New Year. And thank you, our panel, for being with us tonight. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
America, we stand for freedom. So let us all unite to yearn and strive for our republic that reflects our values, that preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might, that reflects our values and preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and